This is sort of a different live feed. I wanted to do a live to chat with you. A lot of times I'm talking about my business and what's going on in our world and basically just sharing sort of what we're up to. But I thought maybe there was a way for me to chat with you guys and give a little bit of, I guess, give some tips if you're an entrepreneur or you're wanting to start out your own business. Maybe you're in business yourself right now. I guess before I get into it and start giving some info, my background is that I was originally a manager in the film and television business, and then I went on to own a retail toy store. Went on to work for, be a manager for several retail companies, at one point managing 27 stores for a clothing chain. And then going off to be a senior manager with Apple, and then now having my own business again. So I've had a vast bit of experience, whether it's managing, being the general manager of large department stores, or running my own shop now and having fun. I thought, well, maybe there's something I've learned along the way that might help you guys out. So here we go. I'm going to do a little bit of a live feed today. So I'll kind of cover off a little topic, and then I'll do a Q&A at the end of that and kind of, get into that a little bit. So my wife and I, Melissa and I, decided to open up our store. We have an antique store, but it's not just antiques, it's collectibles and other sort of interesting things. We carry all kinds of neat stuff. We opened it up coming up on 5 years here, which is kind of crazy to think. I think we're in our 4th year now, and the next year will be our 5th year. So just crazy that the time is flying by like that. And I see Sergeant Red is with us right now. They're going to be opening up their own shop soon. So maybe this is helpful to some of you guys. Maybe it's not. We'll find out. But before we started our business, and this is the very first thing you want to do, step number 1, I would say, is have a vision of what you want to do. We went into this venture wanting to not just buy and sell things and make money off of the buying and selling stuff, but to try and provide a really unique experience for people. And I think it's important for you to have a mission statement, to talk about what your business is all about, and to really try and have a vision for what you want to provide your customers. Because if you go into it and just say, I'm going to be a store that buys and sells things, well, there's a lot of places that buy and sell stuff. When we went into it, we wanted to be a place of wonder, a place where people would see things that they might not see every day, a place for people to come and enjoy and maybe have fond memories. And that was kind of brought about by my past of going into specialty little shops that really stood out for me, where it wasn't just about a store, it was seeing unique products, seeing things that really caught my eye, but also having the right kind of environment too. So that was that was a big factor. In fact, I remember going into an antique store when I was a kid, and the guy had diving helmets and he had the gypsy fortune teller, and this is back in the 80s, and I was just like, what is this magical place? And it wasn't really a big store. It was maybe like, a few hundred square feet. It wasn't very big at all, but it left an impression. So it's that kind of Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium kind of vibe, where you want to have things that are really unique and special. And so having that in mind kind of led us down the path of the sort of products that we carry. And whether it's the type of antiques we bring in, or whether it's the type of stuff that we bring through, make sure that you have a clear vision of what you want to do with your business. Even if you're vending at an antique mall, what is your booth? What is your showcase? What are you representing? What are you going to bring to people? So with that in mind, then you have to start putting actual things in motion. And that's, looking at what kind of products you want to carry, sourcing vendors and suppliers, and you can go to trade shows for that. We were in New York. I was in New York last February at the Toy Fair. Might not have a chance to go there again for a little bit because of the way things are right now, but hopefully we'll be able to get a chance to go back again soon. But going to big trade shows like that is a great idea to see what new products are out and what sort of things you can bring in. It really helps keep your products fresh too, which is funny because we're a combination of a store that sells modern products and antiques. We're a blended shop. Basically, if it's cool, it can come in the door. and I've always joked before, somehow I let myself in the door every once in a while, so I don't have to pass my own criteria. But if it's a cool product, it can come through the door. So we try and find things that are really unique and really different, and things that kind of make me chuckle or laugh or smile. And if I hear a customer in the store and they're laughing or saying, "Oh, this would be perfect for, like Bill or Bob or so and so," I know that we're kind of getting some of the right stuff in because people are interacting with it. And it is really important to listen to your customers. When you get your space, when you want to have a building, or if you want to have what they call a brick and mortar store, which is a lot of times is a prerequisite for suppliers to sell to you, is that you have to have a brick and mortar location. When you have that space, whether it's a rented space or a lease space, you have to factor in a lot of things like how much is this place going to cost? And, can I afford it? What are my projected sales? So that's where a bank might ask you to do a business plan. If you're going to, if you're getting money from the bank or a loan or something like that. I don't know. I'll ask the question. How many of you guys out there are entrepreneurs right now? Maybe we'll see. Put a thumbs up if you're an entrepreneur on the live feed right now. Whether you're selling, through online sites or buying and selling at farmers markets, or whether you have a store of your own or planning to have a store. Just curious to see how many people out there. AJ Lang says they are an entrepreneur. I'm just seeing. Lane says, no, not her. Mary, Libby, entrepreneurs. Mama Bear put a B symbol. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe she's a big Mary. Sergeant Red says yes. There's some fingers crossed. I think there's a lot of people that are interested in becoming entrepreneurs. And it's a scary thing to kind of leave something very stable behind of working for somebody else. But there's a few things that I've learned in my life. One, you never get rich working for somebody else. Very, very difficult to do well for yourself and to get ahead if you're working for somebody else. The other thing that I've learned is that you don't have as much creativity sometimes, and it can feel a little bit stifling. A lot of people who are entrepreneurs want to get out there and do exciting things, but the challenge is it takes money and it takes capital and it takes somebody who's willing to take a risk. So you got to be able to be a risk taker in this business to be able to try and do something different and unique. I know our friend Matthew Fox, who's a moderator for us, who's moderating right now. He also has a business where he makes and sells jewelry. He's an artist, a jewelry artist. And so there's all sorts of things you have to factor in. But I'm going to talk a little bit about, so let's say you've got your product that you think you want to sell or that you think you want to offer. You know what you want to do. You know what you want to bring to the table. You've got a vision for it. Well, that's great. Have you done any research? Do the people in your area want the thing that you're going to provide? You have to do market research first. As you guys might know, we want to put a little cafe portion on in our neighborhood. But the challenge is there's a couple cafes in our area already that are primarily morning, afternoon cafes that are there for breakfast, and a really great bakery that I love going to. Vintagerius says I need to learn to think bigger like you. Well, I don't know about thinking bigger, but I'm just going to walk through some of my steps here. But thank you for that. So when you know that there's other competition or other people in the market that are doing what you might be wanting to do, you have to do something slightly different. You have to shift. And so we have a focus to be more of an afternoon or evening coffee shop that would be more of a venue with live music and offer something slightly different in that area. And I think that when you look at what you can offer and stay a little bit different, then you don't cut into, you don't try cutting into your neighbor's profits or customer base a little too much. You just offer a different thing. So you have to look into what am I offering? Is there a demand for it in my area? If not, how do I have this as my home base and then reach out to get out that way? Grammy Pat said she went to our store today just before 3 and we were closed. Sean has to take a lunch break. We do have to give Sean a lunch break, so I'm sure he probably had a little sign saying he was coming back right away. But by law, I got to let the man eat. So sorry that you caught him when he was on lunch, but he wasn't closed permanently. He was just closed so he could go grab a bite to eat. Anyway, I'm gonna get back on track now. Speaking of staff, that is something called a controllable expense. So for those of you guys that have gone to business school, you've probably studied controllable expenses and non-controllable expenses. For those of you that maybe are entrepreneurs and didn't go to business school, when you're looking at things like a controllable expense, those are things like payroll, your inventory levels, the type of product you carry, the margins that you sell things for. Those are all controllable expenses. The type of marketing that you do, that's all controllable. When you look at your non-controllable expenses, and this sounds dry, but it's really important. Your non-controllable stuff might be the rent that you've signed into, your power bill, your water bill, and so forth. Um, the weather. Yeah, I mean, right now, COVID is an uncontrollable expense. And I see April sent us a question here. She says, you need to see the Volo Auto Museum. It's in Northern Illinois. They sell antiques in booze and they have vintage cars. They're all for sale. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that. So the biggest problem that people run into when they first start off a business is that they don't consider the non-controllable expenses. They don't factor in just how much that affects your business. When I say that, it's that, let's say you're hoping to make, I don't know, $10,000 a month in sales, but you've signed rent with a place that charges you $5,000. Well, you might think, okay, well, I'll make $5,000. Well, that's not true. Are you going to have staff? What are your bills going to be like? You know, what are all those other non-controllable expenses? You might end up not making anything if you sign into a rent or something that's too high. I know that some bigger stores, like if you were at West Edmonton Mall, they can charge upwards of $25,000 to $35,000 a month rent for you know, like 1,500 square feet or so, which can be quite expensive. Now, that's just a random example, but many shopping malls and that are very expensive. So you have to be very careful with what type of rent you sign into. That's why when Melissa and I decided to open up our store this go around, we decided that we did not want to rent. We wanted to actually own our space because we knew that the money that we put into our building would end up becoming equity that we could move along. So you can write off your mortgage as a business expense, but then at the end of the day, you have a property which will be owned by your business and is a sellable asset. That way you're paying yourself rent and not somebody else. So if you're in a position to do it, and you can get a mortgage or a business loan from a bank, always try and find a reasonable space that you can possibly buy as well. That way, at the end of the day, your money isn't being lost. Your money's going towards yourself, and you're able to actually have some equity in a building or property. And that's where you can kind of move some of your non-controllable expenses into controllable. What you can't control if you rent a place is that maybe the rent goes up. You know, Sergeant Red says, that's what we did. We need a ton of work to get the place fixed up, but it's all equity. It's worthwhile because then you end up owning a property at the end of it too. It's a smart way to go. But not everybody's in the position to do that. So you have to, I understand that it's a big expense to save up the money. You know, the other thing is when you look at your expenses, you really can't look at paying yourself a huge amount of pay right off the bat. You are going to end up probably loaning your business personal money. And if you're lucky, in the first year or two, you're going to be paying yourself a small bit here and there just so you can survive. But it takes about a year or two to get your business up and running. So don't expect to be starting a business and paying yourself a massive paycheck. You will put yourself out of business doing that. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen locally here where you have a thriving business. New owners take over and they pay themselves a massive paycheck and it puts themselves out of business. So you have to be very, very careful. But if you can move away from rent and have that into a mortgage payment or a loan payment and you're paying yourself back, then that's the way to go for sure. That way you can kind of control what your rent levels are because you can flex what your mortgage payments are. You can raise the amount of payment you want to make if you want to pay that debt off if you're going through good times. But if you're going through tough times, you can also talk to the bank and say if you can reduce your amount and kind of stretch things out. We did that, in fact, with our house before we paid our house off. For the first few years that we had our store, we put our mortgage payments on our house as low as humanly possible, like probably a couple $100 bi-weekly or something like that, as low as we could because we knew that all of our money had to go back into the business and to building up inventory and building up the business itself. Once the store started paying itself back, we then started making lump sums on our house and got that paid off. But flexibility is really important. And as soon as you lock into a lease or a contract that's unachievable for you, that's where people really start to struggle by not doing the research first with what they have. So if you are renting, make sure it's fair. The other thing to consider is that people used to always say location, location, location. It's all about the location. That's true in a sense, but now with social media, And now with the internet and everything, you can advertise quite a bit, and you can have a home base that's a little off the beaten path. We aren't in a major shopping mall. Might not surprise you if you've seen the channel. Maybe you have. When we first opened up our original location, it was in a commercial complex, a business condominium. We could afford to buy that building. It wasn't a great spot, but the nice thing about it was that people could actually get there, and they could come in, and once they got in the store, we could put the extra money that we're saving on rent into having an experience with really cool products. And before you know it, word of mouth travels, people put reviews up for you online, and people come and track you down. I always think about it this way, especially in the business I'm in. If you're willing to drive out to the middle of a farm field, drug yourself out to the middle of a farm field, go digging through a fallen down barn to pull out one old, gas station sign or something, pretty sure people will look at their GPS and figure out how to get to your store if you've got cool enough stuff. And that's where you can do a lot of advertising on free sites like Facebook Marketplace. Here we have Kijiji. You might have Craigslist in your area. But online buy and sell pages are a great place to advertise your items and draw traffic into your store, and you don't have to pay for that advertising at all. And so that's a great way to do it. Where shopping malls get you, and where a lot of people get stuck, is that they will tell you, you will have 10,000 people walk by this store every day. That doesn't matter, folks. It doesn't matter at all, because those might not be 10,000 people that are looking for your product. What you want is to have the right people targeted to come to your location. A great way to do that is social media. There's targeted marketing you can do on Facebook, where you can actually select what age, what gender, what their interests are, and you can target ads. We did this in the very beginning where we were putting ads out on Facebook, and you could actually say, I want to have 35 to 55-year-old people get an ad showing that that have an interest in old cars, that I have gas pumps for sale, let's say. That way you're not just putting it blanket out there into the open and wasting your money. So you have to be very smart with how you're marketing in the beginning. In fact, the YouTube channel that you're watching right now, we started because I didn't want to pay for advertising and I wanted to show people some of the products we were getting in and some of the things we were finding to draw people into the store. And so I started the YouTube channel as a way to do that. Now, of course, YouTube channel has turned into basically a full-time job on its own. And I'm very grateful for it. But, these are creative ways that you can advertise your business too. You have things that you can really look at in your store. So we talked about margin a little bit. Margin, of course, is your profit margin. So you look at what is suggested retail, what are you getting the product at? And sometimes if you buy in bulk, you get a better deal. When you are buying antiques, like I am, your best deal is always when you buy a whole bunch of stuff at once. It's very rare do you get a good deal if you're buying things one at a time. And I'm not just saying because of buying a hoarder house and finding a bunch of crazy cool stuff, which has happened, obviously, for us. But I'm saying that when you go and you buy a bulk, you get a better deal. That actually kind of goes the same when you're buying from a wholesaler. When you are getting a wholesale account set up with a supplier, if you buy in bulk, they generally will do things like they'll give you either like better terms, or they'll give you free shipping or things like that, which means that you can take that money you would have had to invest in that product and have a little bit better margin on it, because you still have to stick with the suggested retail price, but now you didn't have to pay for shipping to get it there, and that can be a big factor. So by doing an order, let's say, if they say minimum $1,500 order, but we will give you free shipping, that might save you $300. So that's actually a pretty big chunk of your expense that's being saved. So always look at ways where you can group orders, group purchases, and try and save money that way. It drove me crazy. Watching American Pickers drives me nuts, guys, because they walk in, there's a mountain of good stuff, and I know it's kind of staged for the most part, but they walk in, there's a mountain of stuff, and he stands on top, he's like, I'll buy this one license plate off of you. And you're like, just buy everything. Like, just come back. The guy's got tons of stuff. Just say, how much if I just cleaned out your whole garage for you? So there's different ways of running this business, but that always used to drive me crazy. Go big or go home. So the other thing you want to look at doing, and we did this last year, and if you've been following the channel and following this, these are the things I started off doing. We bought a place that we could afford. We didn't spend a whole lot on advertising. We did it in very specific ways to target certain markets and also try and do it in ways that were creative to get our stock out there. And once the store started to develop, then we were able to buy a second property, which ended up having the character that we wanted on the outside to match the inside. And that was really important for us. It's a beautiful location, our new spot. But then you have to look at things like what can you do to take your business to the next level? And that's where I would say look at improving your business plan overall. That's where you can lower your interest, lower your debts, and really try not to overdo it. Lowering your interest rates, sometimes you can negotiate with your bank and you can get lower interest, but you can also, like I said, making lump sum payments on your business loan or on your mortgages takes a huge amount of interest off the tail end of your loan. So first few years, we're just basically paying stuff down. We're trying to get stuff paid off. We're trying to pay our house down slowly. We're trying to pay the store down. And so finally, at the end of last year, we got the building paid off. We got our house paid off. And it was all by making lump sum payments when we could afford to do it, and also really managing our stock and trying to sell off things that we didn't need around our own house. The big push for me was I looked at all the extra stuff that we had around our own house that I didn't need. I sold off. So we had the Woody wagon, we had hot rod, I had watches that I'd collected, anything personally that I had that I could live without. I sold off to my last penny so that I could pay off the house and pay off the building. And I went all in on that. I pushed all my chips across the table basically to get us in a debt-free position, because I knew that if I could get us to that spot, that we wouldn't have monthly bills, like we wouldn't have the rent or mortgage or loan payments to make anymore, and we could reinvest in the business a little bit better. So lower your interest as much as possible, lower your debts down. And when I say don't overdo it, sometimes you're tempted if you have a really big sale or you do really well one particular month, it's easy to look at that and go out and just blow it all on something. To take a grand leap of faith and maybe buy a big collection and stuff. But then that inventory is tied up. So what I would say would be to challenge yourself and have a plan that you're going after. With us, it's this other building going up. And I'll tell you why. We are, this is a personal experience. Kathy Lombard, thank you so much. Now that we own our building where our store is, we also own the lot next to it came with our space. Instead of selling and moving into a bigger location, we are looking at building a coffee shop, which you guys all know. I've talked about it for a long time. We've been doing auctions to get the money for it, and I'm making sure we keep that money in the bank for that. The reason for that is twofold. One, and this is the main reason, is that our main goal, if we go back to our vision statement, is to provide a place of wonder, to provide a place that is a great experience for people. And having a little cafe or coffee shop portion of our business is going to add to not just the character of our building and the services we offer, but also add to being a sense of having that sense of community in our area, where people in our neighborhood can come and visit and just really have a great time, but also come and visit our store on the other side. So it's a dual purpose business. A cafe on its own is a risky venture, but when your cafe is to drive business, to drive traffic, and also give you extra square footage to have stock for sale, then it makes sense. So we're going to build this location, and what we might do is actually, and I've said it before, is to build a location, use the space for us to have some extra goods in that, have an area in it that can be used as cafe, but then possibly lease or rent that cafe portion out to somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur. That way we get the rent coming in from that, which offsets the cost of the expense of putting the building up. Why put up a building? You have to look at what the land value is in your area too. It would enhance the value of our property to have a secondary business. If we ever did decide to sell, which we're not planning on anything like that right now, by putting up a brand new building like that, it gives us 2 street front rentable buildings that if somebody was a property investor could then basically buy that space and you could rent out both halves of it to 2 different people. That's why we're doing 2 separate spaces. Long term, I'm talking like 10, 20 years from now, you're looking at having a dual purpose investment that could be rented out. We could either keep our store, we could sell our store, we could keep our store and rent the other half. It's just really, really flexible. That's what it is. Jim Boucher, thank you so much. Thank you very much for that kind message. So my mission is this, guys. Stay as flexible as possible. Is Sean on right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sean's on right now.
I just said how amazing Sean was, and he said, I got mentioned.
Yeah, Sean, nice to join us. So now that you're in a position where you have a long-term plan, you're aiming towards your goals, and you're trying to be as smart as you can with the money that's coming in as to try and make smart investments, then you have to look at your business and really pay attention to it. So the next thing you look at would be listening to your customers. So pay attention to what's selling. A lot of times you'll go into a shop and they carry things that they like. That's all very well, but is it selling? Are they selling those things? And if you've been watching my channel the last week or two, you probably saw that we're gearing up for a really big auction sale, and I seem emotionally torn about it because it's all really historical stuff that I really love. But it was all stuff that was mainly on display. Civil War muskets and swords and Aztec or Mayan masks and things are all very well if you're a museum. But if you're in the business of buying and selling things, you have to look at what product you have in your store, which actually turns on a regular basis. That means what product you have that moves regularly. And you'll also notice that there's areas of your store which sell more product than others. I remember when I was managing a department store, we would have certain racks where if you put clothing on that rack in that area, that clothing would sell no matter what, because there was a certain amount of traffic, or maybe the lighting was better, or maybe the way people generally walked in, it caught their eye. So pay attention to what they would call like an A spot in your store. And that would be like, what are the spots in your store where a customer is going to pay close attention to, have best exposure, and what type of product can you put there, which is going to make sense. So merchandising does come into a big role when you're working a business. Move your products around regularly. Sergeant Red, I know you guys are starting up your business right away there. What people oftentimes do is some people will get into a routine where you put it on a shelf and you leave it on the shelf until there's either a ton of dust on it, or I don't know, you never sell it, or it sells, I don't know. People don't move things around, and that drives me crazy. I move my store around every quarter. Basically, I do a refixture or a remodel. I'll move product around every single quarter. The reason for that is twofold. One is that it gives you a good idea of your inventory, so you can take note of what's selling and what's not, and make decisions on what you should be selling or moving off. The other thing is that customers may, as I mentioned, walk a certain way through your store naturally, see things from a certain perspective. It gives your product a chance to live a second life. I recently moved a bunch of stuff around in my store. I had these t-shirts which are made in Canada, and they have, like the Haviland Beavers or the Avro Arrow on it and stuff like that. We've always sold them since day one. Since day one, I've sold these t-shirts. Now, when we moved locations, I put them on a shelf, sell the odd one here and there. I decided to try and put them on the main table when you first walk in the store. Since then, I've been selling 5 or 6 t-shirts a day, as opposed to 5 or 6 t-shirts every month or two. So big difference. In fact, people didn't even know I had that product. But that's all just for moving it around. So move your product around regularly, and you'll get to know what areas of your store are more productive than others, and also what product actually is selling. I might have given up on the idea of selling those cool kind of retro t-shirts and stuff had I not moved them to a different spot and saw that, yes, it is a good product and it is a quality product. People just couldn't see them. So move your product around regularly. You're welcome, Sarge. The other thing is seasonal displays are a really great way too to draw attention. So if it's Easter, an Easter display; if it's Halloween, a Halloween display. Try and have themes or make it fun when you can. But more than anything, make it really organized for shopping. It's a lot more challenging to do so if you're an antique mall, but I'm going to talk about retail in general. The easier it is to shop for customers, the better. Now, we have product use. If you saw, I had Josh put a bunch of shelves in. We wanted to have, I noticed that the product that was in the showcases was selling at a slower rate than the product that was on the shelf. Now, the product that's on the shelf, you don't want to take like Napoleon's death mask, let's say, random object. If that's in your showcase, probably not going to sell to everybody anyway. No point putting that on a shelf. But if you have things like toys, games, puzzles, and stuff like that, Those are things that people can pick up, move. You're not too worried about shrinkage or loss on an item like that. Because if you are putting something really expensive on the shelf, then you're a little bit more nervous about it. So you have to keep those things in mind too. But keep as organized as possible and make things as easy to move around. Ask the 8 Ball says, another tip is to sell more products than you pay for. Yeah, that helps too. I would say that when you're looking at your merchandising and you're looking at your product, if you've moved your things around, I would say every like biannually. So every 6 months or so, you've moved things around maybe twice now. You have an idea of what products are actually selling and what aren't. If you have dead inventory or dead stock, move it, get rid of it. I'm going to share a story with you. I was a manager, general manager for the Hudson's Bay Company. So I ran a department store, big store, 100,000 square foot store. What I found out is that the buyers, the people that were buying the merchandise and pushing them to the stores, if the item got marked down too far, they would not get as big of a bonus for buying the product. So instead of marking the product down, they would instruct the stores to backstock it, which means put it in a box, literally, stuff it in a corner and don't ever look at it again. So when I got to the store, when I got to the Bay, I did a walkabout of the store. Not like in Australia, I didn't go to the Outback. I did a walkabout in my store. And I went to this one room and it was full of like 10 years worth of clothing that had never sold. It was so out of fashion, like you scan it and it's all showing penny, 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 because the inventory was so old that the buyers who told you put it back there, they forgot it was there. And so they made it basically worthless. So every single store, and I don't know if it's the same with all Bay stores that were there or not. I think it was. They all had a back room that was completely full of dead merchandise and dead stock. And so what I did is I took all that stuff out and I brought the stuff to the floor and I did manager specials rack. They had already pennied it out, which means that they valued it at basically nothing. So I did like entire rack $10, entire rack $5 and whatever. And so we did a big weekend sale. We blew everything out. My back room was cleaned up. I was so proud of myself. Well, guess what happened? Head office said, this store is selling all this dead stock. So you know what they did? They sent me a truckload more of dead, horrible product. So manage your inventory better. In fact, it was inventory management that pretty much did Target in for Canada. They weren't able to get the product from the distribution centers to the store in a timely manner. And that actually made an entire corporation fail in Canada. Inventory management is key in any business. So even if it's a small store, I'm just a small little shop and don't take what I have to say to heart. But, big companies have taught me big lessons. And, that was a big one. I worked for Target when they were there and I saw what had happened. They couldn't figure out distribution. It was a major, major issue. So I go around my store regularly and I know that my shelf space is very valuable. I know that if something sits on a shelf for too long, it's becoming devalued. And for all of those people out there who say, why don't you have a warehouse to store your extra stuff in? No, that's the last thing I want. I do have a warehouse in a sense. It's the auction house. The auction house stores my stuff for free and sells it for me. We reinvest that money. And that's what we do. We take all of our dead stock or assets that we have that we want to turn into something else. We sell them off regularly and we try and reinvest. We try and reinvest in products that we think might do better. And you just keep staying flexible. So stay flexible with your business. Get rid of your dead inventory. Try something new. And don't worry if you're losing money on your dead stock. You'll notice that many stores, like if you go to like a clothing store like the Gap or I don't know, H&M or wherever you shop, oftentimes you'll see a rack of stuff that's been marked down considerably, 50% off or additional 75 or additional 80. That's because they know that the space is valuable and they want the money back on putting in their own product. Don't get hung up on, I paid $5 for this, I need to get $5 back out of it. Put everything together, sell it off at auction. You'll get some money back. You'll do better on things than you thought. You'll do worse on things you thought. It doesn't even matter. You'll have money back in the bank. You can reinvest it in something else, and you'll be wiser in terms of what sort of product that you want to have. A warehouse can be the death of a company. Having warehouse space can be the death of a store because you have extra rent. You have to heat probably that space, maybe. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into just maintaining a warehouse space, and then honestly, you forget what you have in it. We bought warehouses from dead businesses, and it always just reminds me that it's a terrible idea. So manage your stock within the confines of your store the best you can. If you can't house it in your store, you probably shouldn't have it, or you should get rid of something and make room for it. So keep your product fresh. My Dirty Rat 1 says, love how you talked about bringing out dead stock. I worked for Kmart and their entire stock room is full of dead stock, and all they wanted us to do was to keep it neat. See what a waste that is. If you took all of that inventory and you turned it for a smaller profit than you would have hoped for, like Kmart was, and there's no Kmarts in Canada anymore either, all of that money, even if you would have sold it at a loss, would have been reinjected back into the business. And you have to remember that if they ordered 10,000 shirts, they made profit on 8,000 of them, and maybe they got 2,000 left. All it does is it just lowers the margin on the other ones that sold. They still made money overall, even if they lost money on the last tail end of it. Don't get too caught up on trying to just always maximize your margin. Sometimes you just gotta let stuff go. And regularly, we will actually call up other antique dealers and wholesale out product because we want the store to be neat, we want it to be tidy, and sometimes we get product that doesn't work for us in our location. And so this brings me to, I'm gonna get into Q&A right away here, guys. I know I've been yakking for a little bit here. Assess where you're at before it's too late. So if you are, let's say 4 years into a 5-year lease, and your store is not doing well, and you've done all these things, and you've tried moving your product around, and you've been managing your assets really well, but you're still feeling like you're failing, assess what it is. Is it the location? Is it the product? Maybe you have staff in your store that are particularly rude. I don't know. Assess what is going on before it's too late, because when it's fixable, at some point, whether it's 6 months in or a year in, if you're paying attention to your customers and paying attention to what's going on, everything can be adjusted and tweaked and everything is fixable. But if you get to a spot where you don't move your product, you're running low on cash, you can't afford to bring new things in, and your customers aren't having a great time and you're not having a great time, you're gonna find yourself closing your business. And you don't wanna be in that position. So that's where you have to look at your location, your products, and any other factor that might be affecting your space. We decided to move into the location we're in right now, not because the other one wasn't working, but because we knew that the next location would be that much better. It was a heritage building. It had character. It was in a beautiful neighborhood. And being part of a community was a big thing for us. Had we not moved there, we wouldn't have the candy counter. We never had the candy counter before, and now that's a little part of our business. And it makes me smile every day that kids come through and they load up, they bring their allowance and buy bags of candy and stuff. It's just great. The variety and the spirit of our store is so alive and so energetic. It just makes me happy to go into work. And that is really what you should be looking for. Aside from having a mission statement for what you want your business to do for itself, what do you want to get from this business yourself? A lot of times an entrepreneur is buying a job. And Steve Jobs said, of course, if you love what you do, you'll never feel as though you worked a day in your life. That's truly important. I think it was Warren Buffett also said that the best money you can make is the money you make in your sleep, which is what they call by creating a pipeline. So that's where you have sales being generated online, let's say, or things coming from ad revenue like we get sometimes from YouTube. Things like that will help make your business move more fluidly. But what I'm saying, guys, is to be creative. So I've been talking a lot. So I thought I would read some of your questions here and try and answer some stuff.
I have one that I said I would remember.
Okay.
Ryan asked on your last video, and it wasn't the UFO watch. What was it?
The vintage watch I was wearing was an old Omega, like a 1960s Omega watch.
I remembered Ryan.
I'm not even wearing a watch today. Look at that.
And what is the auction again? Oh, I see Matthew just put it up for anybody asking. Do we have anything on eBay right now?
Nothing really. There might be some cameras or something on eBay. There's not a whole lot there right now. Yes, and so we're talking about inventory management. Our last auction for the Musician's House sale, when we bought the big contents of that house, the big auction sale is happening tomorrow. We're going to do a live feed, a live stream, watching the auction end tomorrow. And hopefully it'll be a successful sale. But again, what are we going to do with that? We're going to be reinvesting back in our business. Okay, let's see. What other questions do we have there? Oh, best tips for sourcing when starting out. If you're starting out in the antiques business, it's a little bit more challenging because it's harder to get leads unless you have an actual store. That said, I would run ads in your paper saying I buy antiques, I clear estates and so forth, and start chasing some of those leads. Before you know it, one person will give you a lead for another person and it will snowball. And before you know it, you'll be super busy with following up on people's leads.
What type of items do you think sell the most for you?
Dave asked, what type of items do you find sell the most for you? The items that sell the best for me, Dave, are items that I think either connect to somebody's childhood. You should know, you buy Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels are a good seller when it comes to the antiques. But when it comes to other things, if it makes somebody laugh or smile, like some of the products we carry, like the funny little socks, the t-shirts, that stuff sells regularly. There's not a whole lot of profit margin in that. But those are things that sell every single day, like the candy, the fun sort of little items we have. The general merchandise in our store sells regularly, but it's the bigger things like the pinball machines and that make us a little bit more money. That's why it's nice that we're a blended store and we carry new and old things, because then we can kind of flex the type of product that we carry. Okay.
Why don't you have reserves on the bids at the auction?
We are not putting reserves on. First, Castor generally doesn't do reserved auctions. It's not something that they usually do. Sorry, Matthew just said I'm a Civil War veteran. It's because I dropped a Civil War gun and broke my toe last year. That gun's up for auction, actually. April 23rd, that Civil War pistol that broke my toe. There might be a chunk of my foot attached to it. I said I'm the last guy injured by a Civil War gun. I forgot what train of thought I was on before I saw that comment. You made me laugh, Matthew. That's what happened. Lori says, is it hard to keep the kids that come into your store from touching expensive or breakable things? No, because I set my store up that all the breakable stuff's in the showcases and all the stuff that's out is pretty much durable or can be touched. My store is built in a way that the good stuff is behind glass and the stuff that sells regularly is out for people to touch. And honestly, I don't stress myself out. I got 3 kids of my own.
It's good for them to learn.
I want them to not be afraid of antiques. The worst thing you can do, if you're an antique dealer or an antique owner out there, the last thing you want to do is make children afraid of antiques. Don't touch that, or get out of my store, or put your hands in your pocket. Who's gonna have a good memory of antiques if you're always told not to touch or do anything? What I do, I set up jukeboxes, pinball machines, and I say, kids, here's some quarters, go have fun. I want them to experience our store and have fun in the store, and I'm not worried if they're touching stuff at all. If it breaks, I had it out, we'll deal with it. Unless they're like actually trying to break stuff, which hasn't happened, I'm not too stressed about it. Sarge says, part of my business plan is utilize social media, as you mentioned. What did you find was the best way to grow your YouTube channel?
Time and persistence.
Consistency, like putting out videos regularly, but also doing unusual things doesn't hurt either. I mean, we regularly buy, weird stuff. And so I think that doing things that maybe attract people to what your content is helps for sure. I was actually at a person's house the other day and I was hoping that it might lead into another Hoarder House series. We'll find out. So far, I haven't heard anything back yet, but these things take time. That's why it's like every year or so that I do one of these Hoarder House series because I kind of wait for the right one to come along.
You were saying why you didn't have reserves.
Oh yes, the auction doesn't have reserves because they want to encourage people to bid. So if you put a reserve on something, somebody might say, I'm not even gonna bother bidding because I'm probably not gonna win it. If you go no reserve, well then you know that somebody is gonna be more enticed to bid. And if you have an item that's worth $1,000 and it starts off at 10, which is what we do a lot of times, you start it off at 10 or 15 bucks, that just $5 more, just $5 more, it's a mentality. It's almost like the same sort of mentality, I hate to say, is going to a casino hits you when you're at an auction. Auction fever sets in. So unreserved auctions actually are a little bit better because the person at the other end knows that they could own that item at the price that they're at. There's a bigger risk, but you hope that it's going to draw the right kind of crowd. Let's see. How do you market your business? Carl asks. We have Instagram, we have Facebook. We rely very much on word of mouth locally. We also have YouTube. And, we have basically social media is how we market our business. That's what we do. Let's see. How do you find people that you can sell your surplus or unwanted inventory, like people in your area? It's all chatting with other people. So I've made friends in the business, and that's the thing, folks. Other antique dealers aren't your competition. They're your business partners in a sense. They're your go-to people for you know, when you have inventory, when you have the same kind of customers. It's good to be friends with people in your community that are in the same type of business. I'm not afraid of other people doing the same thing I'm doing. It just means that more people are going to be out there having a passion for this business and having fun. So I have another antique dealer that I deal with. There's several that I've dealt with, but one in particular. He will come in. I'll just call him up, and he sells everything. Sells everything at antique malls and stuff. It could be everything from, you know, like a jar of pennies to an old sword or whatever. I'll come up and say, listen, I got a whole pile of stuff. I'm going to sell you a truckload of stuff, $500. Promise you it's going to be worth it. So we'll value it out, and I'll say, yeah, it's probably like $2,500 worth of things, $500, just take it all away. And he'll take everything. Off it goes. It's the same thing with an auction, that you can auction off things as they go. But for me, it's important to move stuff along quickly and to get things off and on the door, out the door. But working with a good auction house is important. The reason why I work with Kastner's, is that they have a very good online presence, and they're very quick with getting payment for me. Somebody said they're looking for an Indiglo watch. I don't have any Indiglo watches. You can check out with this soon. That's a little too new for the type of stuff I carry at the store. That's not something I normally stock. But
Carl
there you
said,
go.
how do you market your business outside of YouTube? What percentage of your revenue goes back into marketing?
I don't spend any money on marketing.
Yeah,
I
was
spend
writing it, but
I spend no money marketing my business at all. In fact,
we have news reaching out to us though. And stuff.
we do things that are unusual, and so we have the news will come and find us. And do a story. Those help. We've been in the newspaper many times for buying houses. I believe we're going to be on the news again after the weekend because we have all these ancient artifacts going up for sale. But no, we have people come in and they say, hey, you know, for $1,500, we'll do a commercial on the radio for you. And I said, it's the other way around now, where people actually pay to advertise on our channel, which is great because we get, I don't know what they advertise for. On YouTube, when you see the ads, like if it's go buy your new Dodge truck or whatever ads you're getting, we get a small percentage of that. So we actually get paid to advertise while we're advertising our store, which is crazy, but it worked out super great. So we're fortunate that way. But to answer your question, we don't spend money on marketing at all. When I first started off, I tried newspaper ads and stuff like that. Didn't do any good. What did do good was reaching out to newspapers who are always hungry for a story, or to news stations. If you're doing something interesting enough, like in Sergeant Red's case, they bought a hoarder house as well, full of cool toys. They could have reached out to the media if they had a store at the time and said, we just bought this crazy house. Is this newsworthy to you? And a lot of times they'll be like, they're looking for news, folks. The news is looking for news. So if you throw them a bone, a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, that's a pretty cool story. And somebody will come and talk to you about it. So there's very creative ways you can get advertising for your business.
Where can people park when they come to our store?
We have parking in front. We have parking out back. But you can also park, the community hall right across the street is allowing our customers to park there for short-term parking as well. Lots of parking in our area if you come visit. Would you be willing to mentor an entrepreneur? Well, I kind of feel like I am right now with my son. I don't know what path my kids want to go on down the road, all of my children, because our younger ones are focused very much on school. Stephen is getting into high school and thinking about his future, and so we're definitely trying to help him out with his art career as well. James says, now that you've got an E-Type, what's your next big personal goal, not counting the store edition? My next big personal goal, James, you must know me well to know that I always like to have some kind of goal that I'm chasing after. Our goal next would be to find a property with a little bit more land and maybe a workshop, because we're kind of out of space here and our kids are getting bigger and they're going to start driving soon, which means that we'll be out of space. So I think a house with a little bit more workshop space or a bigger driveway would be in the midst for us right now.
Henry said, start a tattoo chain, Curiosity Inc., I-N-K.
Huh. You don't want me giving tattoos, folks. That's somebody just said, start doing tattoos. Sure, I can't guarantee that I'll know what I'm doing, and I can't guarantee that it won't be an antique tattoo machine or even antique ink. You might leave with an infected arm. It might get gangrene by the time you're done, but sure, let's try anything.
No.
Melissa says no. Okay, I guess I have to cancel that idea. No, I guess that's going too far into the stay flexible in your business. Okay, I'm going to try and answer a few more questions here, guys. Yes, Brett says, I think having a place like Casters auction, having Casters is great. Turnover is a big light bulb moment watching with you. Stale is so common, I'll have to find someone that deals in smalls. Yeah, turning your product over is a big part of this business. You know, we don't do sales in our store. A lot of places will go like, you know, this weekend only 50% off of this sort of topic, like this product category, whatever. We don't put anything ever on sale. We do haggle on the antique stuff. We can't on the new stuff. We don't want to on the new stuff because that's a manufacturer suggested retail price. And a lot of times if you go lower than their price, they get mad and they might pull you as a vendor. But when it comes to the antiques, there's wiggle room. But as a rule, I don't do sales. What I do is I do auctions. When I'm ready to get rid of stuff, I'm not gonna, I think that having a sale can cheapen your store a little bit. Sounds crazy. Maybe this is just my own perspective. You guys might think this is nuts. But I worked at Apple for 4 years. We never did a sale. I mean, occasionally they would do a promotion where you get like a pair of headphones when you buy a whatever, like a computer or something. But a sale can make your store feel cheap. And then let's say that you say, I'm running a sale for this week. Well, what happens to all that product that was on sale after a week is up? People know that you were willing to take 50% off, let's say last week for, you know, this or that. And so when the sale is over, do you really want to sit on it still? That's why I just look at it like, man, it's gone. It's going to the auction. I don't care what I get for it. It's gone. And we move it along. Matthew says, can I haggle with the auctioneer about the Civil War used pistol? Sure, place a bid. That's your best way to haggle at an auction. Just place a bid in. Malva says, what countries would you like to go antique hunting? I'd like to go to Paris. I'd like to go to one of the big Paris markets. I think we went to the Czech Republic before, lots of cool stuff there. I don't know, I'd really like to get out and I want to see the world again, folks. This COVID business going on right now is driving us crazy, as I'm sure everybody else, because I have travel in my future is what I want to do.
They're all coming up with new store names. Shoe store, Curiosity Stink. Car store, Curiosity Mink.
See, all these, that's what happens when you have a lot of entrepreneurs on. Why do I think the gun has history? The one that, well, it's an 1863 Colt, which is right in the height of the Civil War. But also the fellow I got it from in Colorado was a Civil War collector, and he had passed down verbal knowledge from the family he got it from that it had been a Civil War vet that had it in their family. So he had it, it came from a family that I guess had it since back in the day. So you get this verbal story mixed in with the fact that it was actually produced during the Civil War. Most of the stuff produced during that time was meant for that use. You know, there was a lot going on in America in the mid 1800s. Let's see. Too bad you can't go to Iran. That would be really cool, I'm sure. Oh, did I miss a super chat? What did it say?
Guess who it is?
Oh, Linda of Iowa says, I'm so happy you got the car of your dreams. Me too. I'll have to do a proper video of that car at some point too. But this is what I'm saying, folks. You got to set dreams. You got to have long-term goals. You have to set your goal here and then look at where do I start? How do I get there? How do I adjust? What happens if it's not working out? How do I fix it? And eventually you get to your goal. At the end of last year, folks, I got rid of every single thing I had to put us in a position where we could start saving money for this year. Every single thing I had, I sold so that we could pay off the house and everything. That was prior to us. In fact, the last of our store's free finances I used to finance buying the musician's house, because I knew that there was probably going to be, if there was nothing in the house, at very least it'd be an interesting YouTube series. Of course, that ended up working out, but that's where you have to take calculated risks. I knew that either way, there was going to be a whole bunch of stuff in that place, but we had already paid off our house and our store prior to buying that place, so we were in a fairly good position then. But when I look back, and I kind of post on our Facebook page, our very first YouTube video, I was out with my dad, and I was out with him going to his friend's place to buy a whole bunch of records. And I was driving, I had, when we started, I sold off everything I had so that we could get the down payment for the building. And I had at the time a Porsche Carrera convertible, or Porsche, some might say. I had a Porsche Carrera convertible, fairly new one. And that was like a car that I really liked. But we needed money for the store. And so I went from driving a fairly new Porsche convertible to driving a 15-year-old Honda minivan with some rust and kind of, a dent in the door. Sold that. I bought $1,000 or $1,500 car, and I drove that thing all over the place, down into Oregon, all over, and I used it as my pick and mobile until I could get us up on our feet, because I knew that it was more important for us to invest the money into a business than it was for us to have a fancy vehicle. And the same thing, the reason why I wanted this E-Type Jag back is that I had one before and we sold it when we needed money then. If it ever came to a spot where we needed to reinvest money again, trust me folks, all of my stuff would go again if it meant that I was taking a step in the right direction. Bigger picture. Because things come and go, but following your dreams doesn't happen every day, so we still get to go. Yeah, my first video is still out there. It's I'm going to buy records with my dad, so...
it was just posted on the fan page.
It was just posted on.
I believe so. Sorry, I'm actually not 100%.
Yeah, we posted on our page, but yeah, our first video is still out there in YouTube land. It wasn't super great or anything, but it was my first attempt at being like, well, I'm off to go buy a whole bunch of records. Look what's coming in.
Tony asked, "Is there any of Stephen's artwork in the April auction?"
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. So, talking about our son mentoring an entrepreneur, Stephen is an artist. Stephen is saving for a car. And as part of that, we're encouraging him to earn the money himself. Now, we want him to focus on school, so we didn't send him out to go get a regular job. But he has a YouTube channel as well, Stephen Draws, and he also is getting commissioned works for his art. So he did a whole bunch of paintings, like, I don't know, 6 or 7, I think we took down to the auction. Those are all being auctioned off, again, no reserve. So look for the listings when eventually that gets posted. Stephen Draws or Stephen Archbold Originals. That's all going to fund our kid saving up money to get his first car. So yes, there will be a bunch of our son's artwork at that sale as well, which is great because my son's artwork is going to be in the same auction as ancient Mayan artifacts and famous artwork by other artists, mid-century artists. It's going to be quite the sale, and I'm just very proud that we have his stuff in there, in the mix. It's going to be really cool. So guys, any final questions before we log off for today? Let's see. Glenn says, I will sell anything I have as long as I'm sure the price is for better of my investment. That's right. It's just stuff, folks. Let's see.
Isn't that the Colt you dropped on your toe?
Is it? Yeah, it's the Colt that I dropped on my toe is going up for auction. There are so many lessons you can get in life. And a lot of times the best lessons I've had have come from people that at the time were the most challenging to deal with. I can't stress enough that, when you look at these moments, like when I was at the Bay and they had all that inventory and I'm like, what's this all about? Because you're coming at it from an entrepreneur's perspective of like, why would I sit on dead inventory and put it in the back? It makes no sense. But sometimes big companies don't think like that. So there is all kinds of stuff that you can do to improve your business. But what I'm saying, folks, is follow your dreams, make sure that you're flexible in what those dreams are, and pursue them with a good, strong business sense behind you, and know when to expand your business, and also know when to reinvest in other things. I hope for some of you this was helpful to some degree. I don't know if it was or not, but these are all steps that I've taken. When COVID hit, I've always been trying to be upfront with what our plans are. As soon as COVID hit and we got shut down, we were mandatory shut down. All non-essential businesses had to close. And so what I found out was that auctions were still going. And so what we did is I said, you know what? We're going to take as much inventory as we can. We're going to auction off over this time. And so being able to auction things off during our downtime actually helped keep us going through the closure and set us up not only for success because we were still open, but got rid of a lot of product that we didn't really need in the store. So even when you have the worst possible scenario where you're forced to close your business for several months, you still have to stay flexible and creative and try and find some way of getting ahead, because I'm in Canada, as you all probably know. If you didn't know, I just outed myself as Canadian, but there you go. You probably knew that. Whether you're Canadian, American, or overseas, or wherever you are, there's that saying, following the American dream. But I think really what that means is just having the freedom to follow your pursuits and passions without inhibition and without any challenges. And so we're very grateful for that. Sarge says, thanks for all the advice. You should do these more often. Good stuff. Well, I appreciate it. I hope it was, like I said, I hope it was beneficial for some of you guys out there. And you know, I did this today because I want all of you to succeed. And if there's anything that I've learned or anything that I've done that might be in any way beneficial to anybody else, I want to share it, because I don't want to just be in this position where you're like, yo, here's a guy with a store, and then, you know, at some point Alex is going to retire and not do this, or I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, right? As visions change, maybe there's something I can do to help other people out there too. And so I really just want to try and give back in any way I can, even if it's in advice. So stay flexible, stay on top of your inventory, make sure that you are selling things that actually people want. That reminds me when we went to the East Coast, and every antique store we went into, I will share one final story before we go. We hadn't been open that long, but we go to the East Coast on vacation. Videos are on YouTube. Look for the family vacation series. I think we have a playlist there. Anyway, we went to PEI. We went to Nova Scotia for the first time a couple years back. And every antique store we went into, and if you're from Nova Scotia, you'll know this to be true. The majority of the antique stores, when you drive from Halifax to Lunenburg and in that area, what do they have? Dishes. Tons of dishes. Every time we stopped at an antique store, I was hoping to find like an old gas sign or oil can or some old toys or something. What do they got? Dishes. So I finally said to somebody, oh, like, how are things going? And he said, oh, it's terrible. Business is awful. Thinking about shutting down. And I said, oh, that's too bad. I'm like, you know, I got to ask, like, why do you have so many dishes? Do they sell? He said, no, they don't sell, but they're the cheapest thing for us to buy. So that's when you have an opportunity to buy stock, but the stock isn't what anybody wants. And so you end up with a store full of stuff that nobody needs, and it puts yourself out of business doing it. So that whole trip, I went to all these stores and it was dishes, dishes, dishes. And I was thinking, okay, clearly people like to eat off fancy dishes in Nova Scotia at one point in time, but nobody's buying them anymore. And you know why nobody buys dishes? Because this is what happened when you were a kid. Don't go near grandma's dishes. Don't touch. And so nobody wants to collect something. This goes back to what I talked about earlier. Nobody wants to collect something that you're afraid of. It's cheaper to buy a beautiful set of 1920s dishes and use them and put them in the dishwasher, which is sacrilegious, I know. But it's cheaper to do that than it is to go out and buy a brand new dish set. It's crazy. But nobody's using dishes much anymore. Hardly anybody is. I know there are people who collect it. So for all you people who are like, I collect dishes like crazy, I don't mean for you to take offense by that. But the truth is some product categories don't sell. The other thing that doesn't sell really well, oil lanterns, like old lamps, coal oil lamps and stuff. Those aren't as hot as they were before. 1990s sports cards, you know, there's certain things you just want to stay clear of. But if you stock your entire store full of stuff like that because it's easy, your business isn't going to be easy. It's better to take all that stuff and sell it and buy one really cool thing and be known as a person who at least has one cool thing in their store, and people will come back in to see that cool thing. So keep looking for the best stuff you can. Stay focused on the things that you love. And I'm not saying that glassware doesn't sell, because chalet glass, Vaseline ware, I still get people coming in looking for depression glass, carnival glass. There is certain glassware that does sell, but your typical sort of china plates and dishes and things are not a huge seller. So why put yourself out of business? Those poor stores out there in Nova Scotia that were struggling and thinking about shutting down, if they did an auction sale or blew all that stuff out, they could probably get some other cool stock in. Listen to your customers and pay attention to what's selling, folks. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for watching today's live feed. More videos soon. Actually, tomorrow we will get into watching the auction end. So if you're interested in watching, oh, thank you, Matthew, put the link for our travel videos there. If you want to see how the auction does tomorrow, we'll do a live feed for about the first hour of it or so. So fingers crossed, it's a good sale. This is me blowing out a whole bunch of extra stuff that I had sitting around. So we'll see what goes. We'll reinvest it back into the business and hopefully create an amazing experience for our customers. Have a wonderful night, everybody. We'll see you all soon, and bye for now. Bye, guys.